Hey friends, and welcome to the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey podcast. My name is Jamie, and I am your host this week and every week. Today is episode number 40, and it is with my friend Shauna Niequist. If this is your first time listening to the Happy Hour, I want to say welcome. Pull up a chair, whatever you're doing your laundry, driving carpool, going for a workout, you're going to love it. And here's why you're going to love the Happy Hour. Because it is myself and another girlfriend chatting, and you're going to feel as though you literally are at Happy Hour with some of your girlfriends. We talk about things that matter to women. We talk about things that are going on our lives. We talk about what helps us be better moms, better wives, better friends, and that's why you're going to love it. Thank you so much for listening to the Happy Hour today. Today on the show, Shauna and I talk about all the books she's reading, which there's a lot, so you're going to need to head over to jamieivey.com to get all the links for those. We talk about her cooking club and her small group and how she has formed those and how those people have come into her life in that special way. We talk about how her family loves to travel and that has been instilled in her since she was a young child. We also talk about how she balances motherhood and her career, her favorite items to have in the kitchen, and what she's working on right now. There are so many wisdom nuggets that she leaves us with that I know you're going to enjoy it. Before we get with Shauna, I want to say thank you to people that have left comments over on iTunes. Montana Mom says this: I have enjoyed listening on these wonderful conversations with your great friends. My book list keeps growing, and I'm inspired to do so many great things because of this podcast. I feel like I'm right in the middle of the conversations and sometimes find myself talking back to the podcast, answering the questions and chiming in. Thanks for being so real and fun, giving me something to look forward to a week while at work, driving, or cleaning house. Montana Mom, thanks a bunch. That's really what the podcast is. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, head on over to iTunes. It's really easy. Just search in iTunes for Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey, and it'll come up, and you can hit subscribe. And then every time there's a new episode, you'll never miss it. It'll come right to your device. If you love the show, I'd love it if you'd leave a comment. It helps other women find the show as well, and we always want more women with us at the Happy Hour. So guys, thanks for listening, and here is my chat with Shauna. Hey, Shauna.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to talk to you.
Happy Monday.
Thank you. You too.
I'm so glad you're on the Happy Hour.
Thank you. This is fun. Thanks for doing this.
Yes, I'm so excited. I'll tell you a little bit. We've met each other in person and
Yes.
done some things together. But I will tell you this, a little dorky. I have been so looking forward to having you on my show. Like, really excited.
Thank you. This is fun.
It's awesome. I texted Jen this morning and was like, Shauna's coming on because she knows how much I love your writing. So I'm super excited. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, so tell everyone that's listening a little bit about what you do. And, well, we know you're a writer, but you do a lot. So what are some of the things that kind of describe Shauna? What would you say about that? Your little 30-second elevator pitch of who you are.
I'm the mom of two boys, Henry and Mac. They're 8 and 3, and married to Aaron, who's a worship leader and a pianist and a pastor. And we live outside Chicago. And I would say one funny or interesting thing about us is that we have people over just absolutely constantly. If you could see all the dirty dishes in my house, it would make you weep. So we love that. But I literally paper plates. I have to make something happen. Yeah.
That is one of the things that I always think about you is that that is something that you value, is having people over. Mm-hmm. Do you do all the cooking, or is Aaron a cooker?
Aaron's not. Aaron doesn't cook at all, but he does grill. So that's great. And he's really good at it. But I love to cook. It's really, really fun for me. And Aaron's super low key about it. I could totally get takeout every single time if I wanted to. I just really enjoy it. But sometimes, so we had, maybe 12 people over last night after church, and it was a last minute thing. And we had a little bit more of a fancy dinner party Saturday night. And so it came up at the last minute, and Aaron, it was kind of more his thing. And so one of the girls that he works with brought over snacks. So I popped some popcorn and warmed up some blueberry crisp. It is so low key. Yeah. So we do it a lot. And the way we do it a lot is by keeping it super simple.
Okay. But you're saying super simple, and some people are listening and are like, the only thing I can do, Shauna, is make chicken and rice. That's it. Have you always loved cooking, and has your entertaining changed in years?
Oh, totally. So no, I did not always know how to cook. I didn't grow up learning how to cook at all. My family's not super interested in food. I'm really the only one that cares about it. But I always loved to entertain. And so when I bought my first house, after college, we had people over absolutely all the time. And looking back on it, I served people frozen pizza and ice cream sundaes and didn't even think twice about it. So, well, I don't know how to cook, but I'm not going to not have you over.
Right.
So, I mean, we or got takeout, or I made like pasta with red sauce from a jar over and over and over again. And I just figured people would rather be in someone else's home than not, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're all going to eat dinner. Let's not do it alone. And then it was when we moved to Grand Rapids, and Chicago has like such a big restaurant culture.
Uh-huh.
So usually like when you're celebrating stuff in Chicago, you rent a room at a restaurant, or you rent out a bar, or you know, even like baby showers and wedding showers and stuff. Very rarely is it like one woman doing or one person doing all this cooking. But then we moved to Grand Rapids, and at that time then there were not, now there are great restaurants there. You know, it's like 12 years ago. There weren't a ton. That town has changed a lot, but there was this amazing culture of people cooking and gathering people in their homes. And I learned from my girlfriends there. Like they would have 12 people over and make homemade soup with vegetables they grew,
Right.
and homemade bread. And it was like, I was like, what is happening right now? And so they taught me, and they kind of gave me a vision for how to do that stuff. And I love it. It's been really, really fun.
Do you find that it is, see, we're the exact opposite at our house. My husband, Aaron, loves to cook. And so he cooks most of our meals. But he finds that, this is what he's told me, it's kind of relaxing for him.
Totally. It's super relaxing for me, especially, you know, my job is either typing or talking. You know, those are like the only two things I do for work. And so there's something about cooking that's so physical and sense oriented.
Yeah.
You're chopping, and there's smells and sounds. And so I think it gets me out of typing, talking world into like fire, heat, knife. You know, I enjoy how kind of elemental and tactile it is.
Also, your brain can kind of wander, I would imagine. Whereas
Totally.
when you're typing or talking, your brain is pretty focused on what you're doing.
Totally.
Obviously.
Yes. It's very relaxing.
Yeah. So I take it like it is at our house. Our kids will eat almost anything you put in front of them. Are your boys like that?
You know, they're kind of hit or miss, and they go through little phases. Henry, our older one, you know, I tend to think of him as pretty picky. And then the other night he was like, you know what I love is sushi. I was like,
You're like,
what?
okay.
But someone told me once that, and I really take this to heart, is that you can either push your kids to be extremely well behaved at the table, or you can push them to eat things they don't like, but you can't always do both at the same time.
Oh.
And so they said, like, if you're eating out and you're like worried that they're in a grown-up restaurant and everybody hates you for bringing your little kids, let them eat whatever they want, but help them to be quiet and respectful of where they are.
Yeah.
And then at home around your table is where you're like, no, you're going to sit here till you finish your broccoli, you know?
Right.
So we try to do that. At home is where we push them to try things. And then when we're out, we're like, you know what, whatever.
That's so funny. My oldest is 11, and he was going to have like a little dad day the other day. And he's like, can we please go eat sushi? And that is always just makes me laugh too, to hear like a kid love sushi, but it's great.
Totally. Yeah, I love that.
It makes it way more fun for us when we're trying to figure out where to go out to eat. But anyhow, you know what, Shauna, I actually asked a couple of people, since we're talking about dinner parties and stuff, I asked a couple of people what they would want to talk to you about. Mm-hmm. And most of them were about cooking. And so you can tell where people, they love to see what you're developing and you're cooking and all that kind of stuff. But one of them was about this concept of gathering people around your table. Now, I know you have a cooking club, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you have a supper club?
We have a small group. So, so cooking club is 6 women. We've been getting together for maybe almost 6 years. And theoretically, like we get together once a month, and whoever's hosting decides the theme for the night and cooks the main course. So we're doing, you know, Greek food at Amanda's, and she'll make the, I don't know, falafel, you know, or not, I guess that's not Greek. And then everybody else kind of fills in around it. So we don't cook together. We eat together the things that we've made. Okay. And we get together once a month. But they're my best girlfriends. So we're going to get together tomorrow night just for a play date. And our kids are friends. And they're very much like the day-to-day
people in our life.
Totally. Just in and out of our house all the time people. But formally we get together once a month. But we see each other a lot besides that. And then we're part of this small group. And there are 9 of us, 4 couples and 1 guy. And we meet every Thursday night, and it's usually around our table. So
with food and everything.
Yep. I serve dinner. Yep. And I always do the main course. And then they fill in salad, bread, wine, dessert. And we just figured out during, via email on a Monday morning, I'll send out an email and I say, how many places should I set this week? And I'm making tacos. So I need chips and who wants to bring dessert and whatever.
And then everyone just fills in the holes.
Totally. And it's so great. And we have found for our little group that we do the conversation feels really great and really rich when we stay at the table. But when we make that formal move to the living room for the quote unquote real part of the discussion, it just totally falls apart. All of a sudden it's we're staring at each other like strangers.
Right.
And so we've decided we just stay at the table. That's our thing.
I love that.
For us, it works better for us.
I feel like there's just something about sharing a meal together. And, we see it in the Bible so often, but there's just something about sharing a meal where it just feels like you're at home and you're at ease. And these people's walls can be taken down because it's just, you're eating together. I love it.
Totally. And I always think, some of the hosting people or gathering people, you're creating safe spots. You're holding space for someone to be seen and loved. And so I think of that. Our friends have such busy jobs and such fancy jobs. I'm so impressed by them. And I love the idea that at the Thursday night, you're almost done with your crazy work week. Please come to my table where I will feed you and you'll be safe and you don't have to prove anything and you don't have to push. I will create space and protect you. I love to be able to facilitate that for people.
That's great. We are in a supper club and we started out in the beginning, probably about 3.5 years ago, meeting every month. And what we do is whoever is hosting, so whoever house that it is at, they do 100% of the cooking. Wow. Everyone else just shows up with a bottle of wine. And we do it late, around 8 o'clock, so people can put kids down and all that kind of stuff. And then we eat and hang out and, whatever. But that person's that is at their house does everything. So, and then we rotate, there's 4 couples and we go through a round. But I remember when I started the supper club, and I remember, because Stacy's question for you is, how did you pick these people in this club? And so I remember for me, I chose 3 couples that Aaron and I loved that we might not get to see very often. So then we could commit to once a month, we're going to see you and we're going to hang out. And at the time, 3 of us were staff working at different churches around the city. And so it was great for us to kind of come together. But Stacy wanted to know, how did you pick your people and not feel as though someone wasn't invited? Does that make sense?
Totally. And I people ask stuff like that all the time. And I would say a couple different things. Certainly, if there had been a natural, there were 7 girls and we decided to include 6, that's awful, right?
Yeah.
It was not like that. It was, I invited my 2 cousins and one of our mutual friends, and then my college roommate. Everybody kind of knew each other, but not well. Yeah. And then I invited my brother's girlfriend at the time. Mm-hmm. So that was our original 6. Then the girlfriend moved away. And then there was another woman who it seemed to me like maybe a natural fit to invite her.
Yeah.
And I asked all the girls and we talked about it together. But for us, 6 is a really natural number because 6 can fit around almost anybody's table.
True.
Any bigger than that, and it starts to get like a big group. Mm-hmm. But I would say that's the only and it's pretty unusual to have a group of 6 that's sort of a closed group that's been meeting together for so long. Our small group, we take it season by season. We just say hey, can you commit to this till June?
Yeah.
And then over the summer, we're going to talk about it again. And if you want to kind of re-up for 1 year, we had a couple move away. We had a couple decide that because of the age of their kids, they couldn't do every week, and I think that's I think our cooking club is really unusual. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really healthy to say, let's walk this season together and then see where we end up a year from now. Yeah. So that you're not asking people to sign up forever and ever. And that's where things get complicated. Can we add people? Can we not? Can I leave if I want to? Can I not? So keeping it kind of a season by season commitment feels a little more realistic.
I love the cooking club. I actually would like that, although I don't love cooking, but I would like it because I do actually enjoy looking for recipes and then trying it out. So it would be a safer spot for me to display cooking.
Totally. And that's, part of the point is we push each other, try something you would never try something your family would never eat.
Yeah.
A couple of the girls' kids have real significant food allergies. A couple of the husbands are real picky eaters. So we all have a lot of stuff that we don't get to make at our house. Mm-hmm. And this is try it. Put tons of peanuts on it. Put tons of dairy in it. Make it super spicy. The stuff we don't get to serve around our normal tables because of our kids or our husbands. And we don't have very many rules, but one of the rules is no practicing And even if it's terrible, you have to bring it.
Oh, I like that.
So it's not about showing up with something perfect. It's about showing up having tried.
I love that. Let me tell you, my cooking is so bad that sometimes I'll be reading a recipe and there'll be something on it that I don't have. And I'm just like, I can't be that important, you know? And then I tell Aaron about it and he's like, you know, you can do that sometimes, but actually you really do need this much flour when it calls for this much flour. And I'm like, oh, that's probably the problem. I mean, I'm so bad, Shauna. It's just ridiculous.
But
So bad.
you just get better by trying.
Yeah.
Because now you know that, okay, flour's not something to mess around with.
Right.
Or now you know, like, okay, if I don't have flour, I can use almond flour. In some situations, I could use cornstarch, but in other ones I couldn't, like it's just something you learn by doing.
When you cook, do you mostly just make up stuff in your head or do you follow recipes?
I do some of each, but I never follow a recipe exactly. Never. And that's some of why it's such a challenge, like to get the recipes written and tested for Bread and Wine and Savor. Because I'm literally like, oh, like you could do like a cup, 2 cups, or a different vegetable entirely. And then like you could do dill,
right,
like whatever, basil. And they're like, my publishers are staring at me like, that's not a recipe. That's like a stream of consciousness, so mumbling.
It's like sitting with your grandma when she tells you all her favorite recipes. And she's just like, a little of this, a little of that. Yeah. Okay, speaking of Bread and Wine and Savor, I loved both of those. Well, I just have your new book out right now, Savor. But Bread and Wine was so wonderful for me. It's so good. And I have made something out of there.
What did you make?
Let me see. Oh, the blueberry crisp thing.
Yeah, we just had that last night.
And it is so wonderful.
Well, it's good
and
because it's
super
healthy.
Easy.
Yeah, super easy, and you can eat it for breakfast and not feel bad.
And it's gluten-free.
Exactly. And it's vegan. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I'll put a link on the page for that recipe. But the book of yours that I just fell in love with is Bittersweet.
Really?
Oh, my gosh. Now, is this your first or second?
Cold Tangerines is the first.
Okay, and I have never even read that one. What's wrong with me? So Bittersweet, maybe I love it so much because it was my first exposure to you as well. But I remember exactly where I read this. I was at a resort in Mexico reading. I just love to read by the side of the pool. And I read this book over those couple days and just cried and laughed. And I cried a lot. I remember that. But the tagline on your book is thoughts on change, grace, and learning the hard way. And it was just one of those books that I felt it was just like water to my soul. Like, oh my gosh, she gets where I've been, I loved it so much.
Thank you. That was the hardest one to write. So I'm always happy to hear.
Was it the hardest because it was so personal?
It was hard for a bunch of reasons. Some of it was because that was a hard season to live through. Yeah. So then to write about it was really hard. Like I actually tried to start Bread and Wine right after Cold Tangerines. Gotcha. And I just couldn't get going. And finally I had to I made a promise when I was when I decided to be a writer that I was going to tell the truth about my life no matter what. And there's all this like really icky stuff about my life and about my response to it that I didn't want to share. And so I realized if you decide to be a truth teller, you don't just get to tell the good stuff. So living it was really hard. And then writing about it was hard. And also I think the second of anything is really hard. I think, everybody has an idea of what the second thing is going to be. And so I struggled more with that book than any other. But I think if you've ever been through a season where it just feels like everything in your life is broken down at the same time, it's so comforting to know you're not the only one that has been through those seasons.
I have given this book away. I have loaned mine. I have bought books for people from this book. And just that reason right there. Like when they're either on the other side of that really difficult season or just smack in the middle. I'm like, this is so good. I was looking through my copy this morning and I was like, okay, what do I want to talk to her about? Because I have almost the entire book underlined. But this was I'm going to read my favorite paragraph in the whole book to you. So I'm sure that you probably don't like listening to your own stuff. That's how Aaron feels when he has to listen to his music. But whatever, here it is. You say this. When you're mourning, when something terrible has happened, it's on your mind and right at the top of your heart all the time. It's genuinely shocking that the sun is still shining and that people are still chattering away on Good Morning America. Your world has changed utterly, and it feels so incomprehensible that the bus still comes and the people in the cars next to you on the highway just drive along as if nothing's happened. When you're in that place, it's a gift to be asked how you're doing, and most of the time the answer comes tumbling out like water over a broken dam because someone finally asked. finally offered to carry what feels like an unbearable load with you. I could cry right now just read like that makes me cry, because in the midst of when I was reading this, I was walking through such a terrible season, and I totally understood what you're talking about. I'm like, I'm dying and everybody else's world just keeps on going. And we've all been there. And in fact, I've been on the side where the world keeps going. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like someone
totally.
has shared something with you and you remember it for the 3 days after and you pray for them, and then your life just keeps moving and they're still hurting. But I remember thinking that, like, Jamie, I want to be someone who continues to ask, you know, like, hey, how are you? And really want to know. Oh,
Well, and I thank you for saying that, but I think you just, when you've been through some of those hard seasons, you realize how much you're aching for someone to ask you about it. So I think I learned kind of the hard way, like you learn anything, that one of the biggest gifts you can give people is like, I'm here. Tell me again. Tell me again exactly how it happened. Tell me how it feels today.
Yeah. I remember about a year and a half ago, we lost someone in our church. And I remember I was talking to another friend about the family, his wife and his left here and her little son. And I was like, man, I want to ask her like things about how she's doing, but I'm worried that it might like upset her. You know, we don't want to have to talk about him all the time. And she was like, oh my gosh, she loves to talk about him. And it was like a little like light bulb went off that like, of course she does. Like if my husband died and no one ever asked about him, I would be really sad, you know? And so it was just a reinforcement of that. Like it's in a very like, you know, loving, friendly way. It's okay to meet people right where they are and talk about what they're going through, because it makes them feel as though you care.
Totally. And it reminds them that they're not alone in it. You know, there's that sense. There's something about when you're happy, you see all the happiness in the world. But when your heart is broken, it's all you see is other people being happy. Like you feel not just heartbroken, but also really isolated. You're like, why is everyone winning the lottery and getting engaged? Like, what is happening in my life?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so anytime we can reach into someone's pain, because it's just so inherently the nature of it makes people feel alone. So the more you can say like, this is hard for me too, or I felt this too, or I'll just sit with you, you know? I think it's really a gift we give people.
That's awesome. Okay. So then after you wrote Bittersweet, you wrote Bread and Wine. What was like you said you wanted to write that before. So that's always been something that you knew was going to come out of you.
Yeah. You know, Bread and Wine just felt like I still can't believe, like, I just basically said, this is exactly the book I want to read. And I don't really care if anybody else wants to.
That's great.
I'm just endlessly, I could read about food and what people eat and why and what they serve with what and the story of, I could just read that forever. And then I always love to hear about people's faith stories. And specifically, how does the fact that you're a person of faith make a difference in the way that you live day to day? How does it make a difference in your house, around your table, with your friends, at your kids' school? Like I'm not a big idea person. I'm a like on the ground, how does this work person? And so Bread and Wine was just it felt like playing to get to work on that.
Oh, it was so good. And I mean, if you haven't seen this book that Shauna, it's full of recipes, which is really, really awesome. And the stories, I mean, I felt like it was the perfect follow-up also to Bittersweet even. I mean, the way that I felt like some of the stuff you wrote about was like almost kind of closure from where we left off in the book before. And so I was like, oh, this is so happy, you know? Really, really good. Okay, so then that leads us to your next book, Savor, which just came out. And would you call it a book? What do we call it?
Yeah, it's a devotional. Yeah.
Devotional book. Yeah. So once again, this seems so off from your other books. What happened here?
I
mean off, but not off, but I mean like it's a devotional and the other books are books. Yeah.
Right. The team that I work with had come to me at several points over the last couple of years, wanting to do this. And I shied away from it, initially because I don't generally think, I don't think of myself as like a super devotional person. I don't tend to think, I don't think the fullness of our spiritual life happens alone with like a book and a Bible. I think that spiritual life is happening all the time. It happens when we talk and when we pray and when we laugh and when we serve each other around the table and when we play with our kids. And, I think the spiritual life is so much broader than the devotional practice. But what happened is I got into this season of my life about 2.5 years ago where I felt like everything was kind of falling apart, and I didn't like the person I was becoming anymore. And I thought it was about being too busy, and it was, but it was also about having walked away from the practice of morning prayers and devotions. In my busyness, a whole bunch of things that I used to do, I stopped doing. And I stopped beginning my morning with kind of centering prayer or like meditative prayer. You know, God's love for me is unconditional. There's nothing I can do today to earn more love. There's nothing I can do to screw up his love, you know? Yeah. And that practice of starting the day either with a word or a verse really helped me get back to the person I want to be and that I believe God wants me to be. And so this time around, when they came back to talk about a devotional, I was like, you know what? I am all about devotionals. Yeah. So I think it just was a personal thing for me that it became a really valuable part of my private life as a Christian. And so it was one I was excited to work on.
And in true Shauna form, it's full of recipes.
Yeah, because again, my only little hang up was I just don't believe, I don't ever want to communicate to people that like, you're a super good Christian as long as you do this every day, or like, the real spiritual people spend a lot of time being quiet. The real spiritual people spend time being quiet and in community and serving. And you know what I mean? Like I always want to be talking about a kind of a vision for faith that's so much broader than that. And so I said, the recipes are essentially a reminder that spiritual life happens around your table in the same way it happens alone with a book. And so every time you hit a recipe, ask yourself, when was the last time I gathered my people around the table? When was the last time I served them and made space for them and looked them in the eye and listened to their stories in an unhurried way? So that's what the recipes are for. They're reminders that spiritual life doesn't just happen with the book. It happens around the table and on the running trail and a million other places.
Oh, for sure. I love it. Erin and I, we've been in a really busy season right now. And I'll tell you, one thing that's given away and hasn't been happening is having people around the table. And we can both feel it. Like we can sense it that this needs to be back quickly, you know, very quickly, or else we're just going to lose our minds. This sounds, you know, I went on a trip to Uganda with Sarah Harmeyer.
Yeah.
And everything you're saying, like we got to chat, and she's just like you, like
yes,
people, table, hear people's stories, listen to them, and she does that so well. And y'all are both onto something. It's great. So getting people around the table is where so much life happens and so much like safety and release and so much stuff can go on right there. I love it.
Totally. Now, well, and what's fun about Sarah and I, sorry to interrupt, what's fun about Sarah and I is we worked at summer camp together.
She told me that.
So we're like now as grownups, we're like totally passionate about the same kinds of things, and people are always trying to introduce us. They're like, you know who you should meet?
Right.
Sarah Harmeyer. And I'm like, I slept on the top bunk with Sarah on the bottom bunk for years. I know so much. And it was but I love how that happens in life. I love how, you know, when she was the athletic director and I was the program director of this little summer camp, we built all this history, and now 20 years later, you know, I got to be around her table and kind of, I get to help tell her story. And I love getting to do that. I think I love what she's doing. It's called the Neighbor's Table. It's so great.
Go look it up. Neighbor's Table.
Yeah. Neighbor's Table. So good.
We chatted a lot about it, and I was just like, oh, I love this. I want to soak this up. I think I worked at the same little camp that y'all worked at.
At Kanakuk?
Yep. K Country.
You're kidding.
K Country.
No way.
Mm-hmm. I was there in 2000.
Okay. Yeah, we were just before that.
Yep. It was my last summer. I was actually still in college, but I had one more year. It took me a little bit longer than most people, but it was my last summer before I got married. And I say all the time, I wish I would have started working there years before. I loved being a camp counselor. So fun.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It was my favorite job ever.
It was one of mine too. Right behind podcasting, which brings me to this, Shauna.
Yeah.
Relevant podcast.
Yeah.
Do you love it?
I do. I totally do. It's the weirdest thing. But they're so great, and they have really become good friends of mine. They're you know, they're great. They have totally become like, yeah.
I love it.
My pals across the country. They're so great.
I listen to that podcast often, especially on road trips. Aaron and I will listen to it just back to back. And we're just cracking up in the beginning.
Don't you think Jesse is just the funniest living human?
It's hilarious.
I don't even understand it.
Hilarious. I mean, they just cracked me up, and I was telling someone about the show, and they're like, well, what do they talk about? And I was like, I can't tell you what they were talking about, but it was hilarious. I don't know what it was, but it was so funny. Just the beginning part where we all just banter back and forth. It's so funny.
Well, and what's so funny about it is, so I worked with them. Cameron's a good friend, and I'd worked with them doing some editing stuff. And then he called on a Tuesday afternoon and was like, hey, I've got this question for you. I'm sorry it took me so long to call, but I was wondering if you would want to be on our podcast. It's on Wednesday morning. And I'm like, oh, totally. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
I had never listened to it ever. And I totally thought he meant one Wednesday.
Like as a guest.
I was like, oh, wait a minute. Now forever? What? Like, I don't, and for a while, like, I couldn't tell the guys' voices apart. It's easier now because it's video. But I mean, I felt like I was like just a ball of stress the first several times we did it because I don't know their jokes and they're all inside weirdo jokes and I can't tell their voices apart. And Eddie would just go, Shauna, are you still there?
Oh, that's so funny. I actually went and looked everybody up after watching it for a couple times, and then it helped me almost to know what they look like while I was listening, if that makes sense.
Yes,
it's sometimes hard when you're listening to someone. You have no idea what they look like, and so then it helps when you know what they look like.
Definitely, yes.
Someone at the IF gathering, someone came up to me, and they're like, my sister said she just saw you on the stage, and she listened to your podcast, and you look nothing like what she thought. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but thanks. I don't know. But yeah, so I love the Relevant podcast. So fun.
Oh, thank you. I think they're great. I think they're funny guys.
So fun. Shauna, one thing that you and your family does really well is vacation together, which I love. Aaron and I also love to vacation and love taking our kids to different places. Was that a value that you had before you got married?
Yeah, it's a value that my parents started when we were pretty little. My parents started a church the year I was born, and things were very busy and things were moving very quickly. And there were a couple families in the church, sort of like, and my dad lost his dad when my dad was in his 20s. And so there were a couple kind of grandpa aged men, who encouraged my dad, like, you've got to start getting away. You can't work this many hours. You've got to make, and so, but we had no money. And so we would drive up to my grandma had this little cottage on Lake Michigan, and we would all stay with my grandma. And then when we got just a tiny little bit of money, we would rent the cottage across the street and then the cottage down the lane. And I mean, I think we rented one for, my whole childhood, probably more than 10 years. It had 2 bedrooms. It had no phone. It had no TV. If someone from the church needed my dad, they would call my grandma and she would run down the street, this little gravel road. My dad would study in the mornings while we were sleeping. He would go to the Burger King or something. He had all his books in the back of his car. And then he would come back to the house in time for us to be up eating breakfast. And we would just play together in the lake all day long. That's it, just us. There weren't church people coming. There weren't friends coming. It wasn't like this huge extended family thing. It was just the 4 of us for hours and hours and hours. And so I grew up doing that. I grew up doing Christmas and spring break and summertime, just the 4 of us, very intentionally going back to the same places each time. And so that makes sense to me. I feel like, I know a lot of pastors' kids who are not wild about the way they grew up.
Right.
And my brother and I are both, my brother works at the church. I teach there. He and I live on the same street. We're neighbors. We see my parents constantly. And a lot of times people are like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
And I think things were busy a lot of the time. But when we were away as a family, we were away. And we felt totally like the priority. So I think we value it because we really needed it and it really served us well. So it's something, our lives now, Aaron and mine, it is busy and we travel for work and we have irregular schedules and we sometimes work nights and weekends. And so what we can do to make sure our kids know that they're our number one priority is make sure we're getting away often enough from all that to be with only them. Yeah. And that's really, really important to us.
And everyone that's listening, this applies to all of us, but I think a lot about like people who work in ministry. You and I both know that world. And so it can become consuming. It can become, if you let it, to where, like when you said, if they want to get a hold of your dad, they couldn't, and last summer, Aaron took a sabbatical and it was the best summer of our marriage. It was the best summer of our parenting. he was just unplugged from everything. And we took our kids on a vacation and we spent the week at a lake in Tennessee. And I look back and it was just the most wonderful experience for everybody because we really just let work go and just really focused on our family and our kids. And so we're doing that again this summer, and he's not on sabbatical by any means, but it really set a precedent for like, what does this week need to look like? You know?
Totally. Well, and I think, a lot of us, people who are in ministry, it's easy to look at other people and be like, wow, they're working a lot. Like, oh, he's sure working a lot building that business, or, oh, that lawyer is sure billing a lot of hours. But because it feels like it's so connected, to our calling and our identity, and we feel like we're doing God's work, it's very easy to overvalue that. And it's helpful sometimes to just say like, yeah, I believe in it. I believe God uses it. And I also believe it does not rise and fall on me. And that if I don't do it for a week, nothing falls apart. And so the other thing I would say, and it sounds like you guys are doing such a good job of this, but especially for some of my friends who kind of ended up as pastors' wives, like they didn't totally see that coming. I always tell them, totally forget about normal weekends and holidays. That's just never going to exist for you as long as you're married to a pastor.
Right.
Your weekends are going to be totally different. Your holidays are just going to be like completely different. So make your family rhythm one that works for you outside of that.
Yeah.
Like Easter Sunday is never going to be a good, relaxing, sleep in morning for you. Never. But, maybe Wednesday is, we go out to lunch on Wednesdays, or we do this, or you have to make up your own rhythm that works, because if not, you'll end up just, your husband will be at work all the time and you'll just be at home going, what happened to our holidays?
And you'll be bitter,
Yeah.
And he's like, but I have to work. And yeah, we have experienced that so much. And when Aaron leads worship here on Sundays, he's gone all day. Yeah. And so that's four all day, which means on Saturday night, we're like old people in bed by 9, no lie, like 9 o'clock we're in bed.
Totally.
And so we don't get the Saturday night fun, but we can stay out late on Friday night,
Totally, yeah.
And then my kids get out of school early on Fridays. So our family time starts a lot earlier on Fridays than it normally does for other people. So you're right. We make those adjustments because we don't have Sundays.
Yep.
It just changes.
Totally. And as long as you get ahead of that and make a plan that works for you, I think it can be a really great way to live.
Yeah. Okay. This brings me to this. Jennifer Baker asked this question. She said she's interested in how you balance and pursue your purpose and passions with your family. Like, how do you balance that out? Basically, she's probably asking, how do you balance your career and motherhood?
I would say I do it different in every season. Kids change so much year to year, and what they need changes year to year, and what I need changes year to year. And then I would also say, like, part of what makes it work for us is we have 4 super involved grandparents.
Oh, yeah.
Like my parents are 2 miles away. Aaron's parents are like 10 miles away. All 4 of them are super involved with our kids. My brother is, his brothers and sisters are. So we have we have a deep bench when it comes. There's a really kind of a total village of people who are really connected to our kids, and that really helps us. And then the other thing I would say is I work a lot less now than I hope to work when they're older. I work, and it changes week to week with the writing and the speaking. And I was actually trying to quantify. Someone asked me, do you work full time? And I was like, well, yeah, I think so.
Maybe.
They were like 40 hours. I was like, oh, like I have no idea.
Right.
But I know that I think there will be a time when I'm able to work a lot more and write a lot faster and do a lot of different projects. And right now my work time is very much confined to when my kids are at school, and then a couple other things outside of that. And that feels great to me. And so I would say, it's different every year. Yeah. I have a lot of support, and there will be a time when work can have more space in my life, but I love that it doesn't right now.
Yeah, that's great. I would say the same thing. I had all of my kids in school starting last year. My youngest is in first grade, and that just changed everything for me because I went into a new season. I went into a new season of all kids at school, and I would say that it changed the balance a little bit. For the better. For me, I got to work more. So yeah, it's just every season's different.
And, there's a lot of stuff I don't do because I work so much.
Yeah.
Like when my girlfriends get together for long lunches or that kind of stuff, or like midday play dates,
Uh-huh.
or I don't really do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I have to do it in other ways and I stay connected in other ways. But when the kids are at school, it's go time for me. And
Yep.
that's great. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But, like we don't live in an enormous house that I'm like filling with antiques that I refurbish. We live in like a super normal house and I just, try to keep it basically, things not broken.
Right.
So you kind of make the sacrifices for, there's only a certain amount of time. And so
Yeah.
I can't think of the last time I was at the mall.
Right.
But that's fine with me
That's
because I love
okay.
my job. And so I had maybe 3 hours yesterday unexpectedly and I worked because I love my work and I want to use my time well. So,
Yeah.
I would say everybody does it differently, but if you love your work, it makes it a lot easier to get it done.
That's for sure. And especially, I mean, if it's your passion, hopefully you love it, right?
Yeah.
That would be weird if you didn't
Right.
and it was your passion. Okay, Caroline Tigner, she asked this. She said, I would love to know a few of her must-have kitchen utensils or cookware.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a huge fan of Le Creuset, like Dutch ovens.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
I really do think you just need one big Dutch oven. You don't need every single piece of theirs.
Right.
And I am kind of a kitchen minimalist. I don't have a million gadgets, and every time one breaks and I throw it out, I tend to not replace it. So I would say the Dutch oven, the Le Creuset, or another one. I do use a cast iron. I have a 10-inch cast iron pan that I use a lot.
Uh-huh.
I have a 10-inch Wusthof chef's knife that is like my number one go-to.
Yeah.
And I have a 10-inch chef's knife, a serrated knife, and a paring knife. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I use. I don't use my garlic press anymore. I don't use I try and keep things really, really simple. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, I love the Epicurean cutting boards. Those are my favorite. They
Okay.
don't split. They're not, so those are a new favorite of mine.
It sounds like when I think about our kitchen, which is where my husband lives most of the time, ours is very minimalist too. Like everything that I ever ordered from Pampered Chef years ago never gets used.
Yeah.
Which they're great stuff, but when you said garlic press, I was like, oh yeah, we have one of those. I've never ever seen Aaron use it ever.
Yep. Yep. And so some of it too is I'm trying to live with a lot less stuff. And so I'm always going through our kitchen going, what could I get out of these cabinets? What don't I need here? And like I don't bake a ton. So I don't need a million different baking things.
Yeah.
I don't need a sifter or whatever.
Right.
If you just cook as opposed to bake, there's a whole bunch of things you don't need. But then, like my friend Margaret can make like wedding cakes. She has a whole bunch of stuff that she has to have that I don't need. So but I think kitchens work best when they have just exactly what you need. Yeah.
And Aaron and I, when he cooks, I'm the dishwasher. So like we can keep things moving because,
Yep.
you'll need it again after you used it. That's for sure.
Totally. And that's how Aaron and I are too. Aaron does all the dishes in our house, which is amazing.
It is amazing.
But one of the things we're moving toward more and more is I keep getting rid of things that aren't dishwasher safe because we have people over so often that I just don't ever want to be like, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't go in. Oh, that can't go, like whatever. Just, so things are getting less and less fancy as the more we break like the wine glasses with the stems, the more we buy just juice glasses,
Yep, exactly. We
just
get those
because
little bitty mason jar things.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
Perfect for a glass of wine.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm like that too. I do all the dishes because Aaron cooks, and so it works out so
That's the
marvelous.
perfect plan. Yep.
Yes, and I love what he eats, and so we're good to go.
Perfect.
Shauna, what are you reading these days?
Let's see. What am I reading? Oh, I just read that really interesting. Is it the John Ronson book? So You've Been Publicly Shamed.
I don't know about this.
Oh, it's really, really interesting. It's essentially about how, people used to do public shamings, like in the era of the Scarlet Letter.
Right.
And now essentially through the internet, we're doing them again. You can ruin someone's career on the internet in the blink of an eye,
Yeah.
And that maybe Twitter especially has a power we don't yet know how to wield well.
Huh.
It was a very interesting book, very well written. I really, really liked it. Rachel Held Evans, Searching for Sunday, I think is absolutely her best book yet. And I really, really liked it.
And that's a new one, right? Just came out.
Yeah, it just came out.
Okay.
I really liked it. Let's see.
Or what are you dying to read next? Anything? What's on your
Well, the
shelf?
next one is it David Brooks. I think a journalist wrote a book called The Road to Character, and I'm excited to read that. Now I'm going on my Kindle and
I
seeing
know.
what.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still reading a book called Hemingway's Boat that I love Hemingway and Eric Larson's Dead Wake. I really like him. I like, he wrote like Devil in the White City and a couple others. I think he's a great writer. I'm reading the Pope's new book, Walking with Jesus. I think I like his ideas. I'm very fascinated by Pope Francis.
Yes. Do you read a lot of books at one time?
I do.
I'm
Yeah.
sensing. Okay.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
Your brain can handle that.
Yeah, and I read a lot. I just read Gretchen Rubin's Better Than Before about habits, and it had a couple ideas that really stuck with me about kind of the one of the essentially in a nutshell, one of the ways to understand how to keep meaningful habits is by understanding what kind of habit keeper you are.
Okay.
An upholder, an obliger, a questioner, or a rebel. So like depending on your personality type, there are certain ways of making and keeping habits that'll be meaningful to you. I thought it was a very interesting book. I like that a lot. Yeah.
I need that because sometimes I do not keep my habits do not last.
Yes, I'm the same way. So
yeah. When do you read? You said you read a lot.
Well, I read when I travel, like
Yes.
when I'm flying alone. I read a lot. I read every night too, though. I
So
read
you're the get in bed and read kind of person.
every single night. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to be that. Our TV broke in our bedroom, which they say you shouldn't have a TV in your bedroom anyways.
Right.
But it recently broke. And so I am reading a lot more at night.
Yeah. And we go through phases where we'll like watch a show on a laptop, in bed. But we both always say like that's just for when House of Cards comes out.
Right.
And then we're back to reading in bed.
Yes.
I love it. Reading it, and reading is I wish I was the kind of person where like running was total medicine for me. It's not. Like I hate it. I make myself do it. But reading totally is. Like I love it. If you said, okay, right now you have an hour, what I would probably do other stuff, but what I would want to do is read. Totally.
I love to read too, and I love to read like on vacation. Like for me, the best dream vacation is just on a beach with a book and a margarita, and then I can be a week there and never leave.
Oh yeah, when people talk about like ziplining through rainforests, I'm like, that sounds fun. I would like to bring my books and just show me a little spot of the sun.
Yes, exactly. I'm a one book at a time kind of person. My brain can't handle too much, and so I'm reading a book from Jillian Lauren called Everything You Ever Wanted.
Yes. I just downloaded that. I read her other book and I liked it.
Did you read Some Girls or Pretty?
Yes, Some Girls.
Oh, I loved that book.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
I love her writing, and so this book, Everything You Ever Wanted, is a memoir about her parenting, and she and her husband Scott adopted a little baby from Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And so it's just the journey through that, and it is really, really good. And like just how Jillian is, it's very raw, very real, very truthful, which I appreciate that. Like you said, if you're going to be a truth teller, you got to tell it all. And so I'm really enjoying it. I'm almost done with it. I read almost the whole thing on the plane yesterday, so it was wonderful.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. That's a good reminder for me.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Okay, before we go, I want to ask you this. We were in Washington, D.C. this weekend, and we, like you said, we ate so much food. We just sat around the table so much, and it was so wonderful. But one of the questions I asked, I'm like the dumb person that comes up with questions around the table. One of the questions I asked everyone on the table was, if you could only vacation to one spot for the rest of your life, like you got to go there every year, but you didn't go anywhere else, and this is where you spent your vacation until you died, where would it be?
Oh, I know exactly where it would be. It would be the North Sound of Virgin Gorda in the British Virgin Islands.
Wow.
It is like just my favorite place. My parents have been going there forever. They started taking Todd and I when we were little. We go every couple years. We've totally I went there when I was 3 and when I was 6 and when Aaron and I were dating, we were just there at Christmas. So, so we kind of do that. We're like people who pick a place and then go there forever.
Right.
And it has the most perfect weather. Like like some days it's 78, but some days it's 79. It's like that.
Okay. And what island is this?
The island is Virgin Gorda.
Okay.
In the British Virgin Islands. So you fly into Tortola and you take a ferry over to the Virgin Gorda. And there's a couple funny little resorts and little beach bars. And it is just my total number one favorite place on earth.
Okay. I'll tell you, this is really close to you. I didn't even think about this, but Aaron and I, we're going there again this summer. And we've been there a couple times before. We go to St. John's. And yeah. Right across the way.
Absolutely. So close.
So we've actually been to somewhere some British Virgin Island because we had to bring our passport one day on a boat and we went to a beach over there. And
Yes.
everything out there is, you're right, it is dreamy. And St. John's, I mean, it sounds like what you're describing. It's not well populated, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
Which everyone listening, I always want to be like, don't go there ever.
I know, totally.
But we fly into St. Thomas, which is way more touristy, and then head over to St. John's, and we literally could spend a long time there. It is wonderful.
Well, and I'm a water person. Like I just, the water and boats and the salty air, I mean, that's just the deal for me.
Yeah, I love it too. I could spend my life on a beach with a book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Shauna, thank you so much for coming on my show today.
Oh, my pleasure. So good to talk with you, Jamie.
So great to talk with you. And we're going to give away 2 books, 2 Savor books.
Wonderful.
I know. So I'm excited. It's really easy. Just go to jamieivey.com and leave a comment, and then I'll pick a winner in a week. And I told Aaron when I got this book in the mail, I was like, the thing that I also love about this book is it looks so beautiful sitting out.
I know they did such a good job. And I can brag on it because I had nothing to do with it. This team made such a beautiful physical copy. They did such a good job.
It is beautiful. It's like a beautiful coffee table book. It's what you want people to see. So they did a great job.
I totally agree. I will pass that on to them.
Are you working on anything else right now?
I am. I've got a couple more months till I need to be done with the first draft of this newest book called Present Over Perfect.
And is it about being present over being a perfect whatever?
It is. It is exactly
I love
that.
It.
Yeah, it's exactly kind of what I've been trying to get the hang of like the last 2 years or so. So it's very personal, very right where I am, I'm really excited about it.
Well, I remember when we chatted at the IF Gathering, you told a story that I have not forgotten since then when you were asking one of your sons, you're like on the floor with him playing with Legos, and you're like, do you love it when we do this or go out to eat or da-da-da? And he's like, I just love it when we do this.
Totally.
And I have remembered that ever since. And I thought that's being present over perfect right there.
Yep. We're working on it. We're learning, but yeah, so I always write books about things I don't yet understand,
Yeah, because you journey through it.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to learn through this one.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I'll be excited to read it because I love your work. So I'm a huge
Thank
fan.
you. It's great to talk to you.
It's so wonderful. Thanks for coming on.
Yep. I'll talk to you soon.
Guys, wasn't Shauna just amazing? I love her so much, and I wasn't kidding when I said that I was so excited to have her because I'm such a fan of her writing. Her book, Bittersweet, holds a special place in my heart. Bread and wine as well, with amazing recipes. If you're looking for that blueberry crisp recipe that we talked about, I have it on my blog. It's jamieivey.com. Actually, anything we talked about, any link, any book, anything is over at jamieivey.com. You can check it out. I also said I was going to give you away 2 copies of Savor, which is Shauna's new devotional, which is beautiful inside and out. And I'm going to do this a little different than I think I mentioned in the show. I'm going to give it away over on Instagram. So go find me on Instagram at Jamie Ivey, and then I'll tell you how you can enter to win. You can tell some friends about it, and I'll pick 2 winners, and then you'll get your new devotional in the book. You'll get your new devotional in the mail. Guys, when Shauna said, when was the last time I gathered my people around the table and listened to their stories in an unhurried way? I was so just compelled to want to do that more often, to not just have people over, but to sit and listen and to sit and really take in what they're saying. So I hope that encourages you. I'd love to hear it. Are you in a supper club? Are you in a cooking club? Do you value this? Let me know anything about this conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. You can leave a comment on my blog, jamieivey.com, or you can find me on Twitter. It's at Jamie_Ivey. I love when you tweet me as you're listening. It's so fun. Or leave me a comment on Instagram at Jamie Ivey. I like to talk with people on both of those ways, so come find me. Guys, thanks for listening so much. I want to say thank you to Lisa Adams. She said, I'm not sure how I missed this podcast for my weekly listening pleasure. Each week you get to meet some of the most incredible women and feel like you are having coffee with them. I swear I talk back to them like I am there. This podcast shares so many passions and interests, it's hard to find an episode you don't love. Lisa, thank you so much. I really enjoy your comments, and that's what I feel about the happy hour. It's so fun for me as well to do this. Guys, thanks for listening, and have a good week, and I will see you next week.